Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to make a pop-up twist card using stamps from our sponsor, Rubber Stamp Tapestry. You can find them online at pegstamps.com. I'm going to link up all the resources and supplies I used in the video description, so if you need a template or anything else, you'll be able to find it. I began by using a twist and pop kit from the paper cut I picked up at the stamp show, but there are free templates online and also dies that you can purchase that do the same exact thing. It's not a new idea, but it is a really fun concept. So what you have here is basically this accordion folded piece that pops out of the center. You have this pop-up mechanism that goes in the middle of your card. You fold it in half away from you, and then you fold it on the diagonal lines towards you, and that's how you make the little pop-up. And this is, depending on whatever template or die you're using, it's on the same principles. So when you open that up, it's going to pop. Now that gets glued on the inside of a regular A2 size card. So you can kind of see how it goes together like this. And the arms kind of spread out when you open the card, and the accordion piece gets glued on the arms. So it gets glued below the score line on the right side and above the score line on the left side. I just wanted to put this in here so you could see how it's going to go, but don't fold it up until you decorate your papers. The first thing we're going to do is get our center kind of focal point. This is going to go on that accordion piece of cardstock that I just showed you. I decided I wanted a big happy birthday, but since I didn't have a stamp big enough, I decided to print it off on my computer and then trace it using a light box on that accordion piece. I like to practice it a couple times just to make sure I know what I'm doing so I don't waste that middle piece, since I did use a pre-bought template. So I'm just using my Tombow markers and just tracing what I printed out on my computer. I used the free Google Docs program and just one script font that came with it for free. And that's how I did that. Now to decorate the inside of this, I am using a stencil. This is by Dreamweaver. It's just a basic quatrefoil design, and generally metal stencils are meant for embossing pastes. So I would recommend a plastic stencil if you have it, but you can certainly use a metal stencil. I feel like it might be a little rough on my brushes, so that would be the only reason I would suggest not using a metal stencil for this. I'm using a color duster or ink blending brush to kind of stencil, because I find a sponge gives a darker, more solid image, and I want to be able to write on top of this, and I'm going to be stamping on top of it, so I just wanted a subtle kind of background element here. So stenciling with a brush works really well for this. You also want to do this to the front of either the front of your card, or like I'm doing a panel that I'm going to glue to the front of the card. I like to do that more than work right on the card base in case I mess it up. So I'm kind of keeping the white card piece that I'm going to glue to like away from me at this point, so I don't get any ink where I don't want it. And then I know I'm going to be stamping with a moss green, so I decided to use my color duster to just blush a little bit of that color here and there. Now this stamp is from the Butterflies and Ivy set. It's nice because it fills in a lot of area with very little effort, and it's really nice for doing frames, and I find that putting a frame on a panel like this really makes it look nice. And that set also has little butterflies and moths and single leaves and single flowers, a lot of little filler stuff that you can use with your peg stamps or other stamps you might have. I'm also using that moss green on the inside pop-up piece, and I am just treating this like I'm making one big piece of pattern paper basically, because I want to make sure it looks good from every angle. I'm using this branch, and this is from the Cherry Blossom set. It's one of my favorite branches because it goes really well with all my other peg stamp sets, and also the Cherry Blossom set is one of the easiest to use. In fact, if you're looking for an easy stamp set or you want to introduce peg stamping to a friend, I would recommend that set. It's less expensive too, because I think it's only 3 stamps in that set, and that branch is so useful with everything else, including my favorite peg stamp of all time set, which is Brambly Rose. I'm using this big rose leaf on top of the vines and branches, and I think it looks really nice. Now that set does come with a little branch, but I prefer this bigger branch from Cherry Blossom, so I tend to use that a lot. Now I like to go in with my larger flowers first and just kind of space them around wherever I have a gap. It's easier to get the bigger elements in first and then fill in with your smaller flowers like I'm doing here. That way you can put a couple little roses where you need it, or just one. You know, you can make it balance. And I just grabbed a leaf from another peg stamp set, and I think this might have been Auntie's Strawberry Garden. I like it because the end of the leaf is really really rough, so it's easy to nestle it in next to a flower and have it look good. Now on the pop-up you can actually see the backside of these arm elements, so I wanted to make sure that they looked pretty, and I actually, to be honest, I smudged some ink on it, so I had to masquerade that. So I decided to do some stenciling and ink brushing and stamping on that so it would look fancy, and then you wouldn't see my big old ink smudge that I got on the back. So make sure you just stamp on anything that's going to show these pop-up mechanisms. You could even do the backside of the accordion fold part, but I really find that I don't see that even when I turn the card around, but I definitely see the arms. So like I showed you at the beginning of the video, you're folding the straight line away from yourself and you're folding the X part towards yourself. So whether you're using a die or a template online, it's going to be the same folding. So just you just want to make sure you've got that right. And then I decided that the panel needed a little more stamping. This is the one that's going to decorate the front of the card. So I went again around with that branch design with the leaves and some roses just to kind of fill that out. So I try to make sure that the inside of the card and the outside of the card coordinate really well. Now this front panel is going to be embellished, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's nice to have those layers that you can build upon. It just looks really nice. So after I put these roses on, I realized that stamping with a red ink for those butterflies wasn't a great idea because they didn't really stand out anymore, so I used a colored pencil to color them so they'd stand out a little bit more. Blue would also look really good, like a minty green or blue would be really pretty. Now this accordion piece, if you want to decorate it, you want to do it now, because if you try to decorate it after you've glued it in, it's going to be very difficult and you won't be able to stamp on it because of the dimension of the card. So I decided to do that same vine motif around the edges. I didn't stencil because I didn't want it to be too busy, and then I used some roses to fill in the space at the front and the end of the word happy birthday because I did it a little small. I didn't want it to be too big, so you know, I went a little on the small side. So when you fold it up, make sure that when you're folding it that you hide all of your decoration. If you folded it up accordion style so you hide all your decoration, then it's going to work right. If you have the decoration on the outside, you're going to end up gluing it to the arms and it's not going to pop out and show. I also wanted to make use of some three-dimensional elements, so I used a begonia die that I just picked up at the stamp show. This is by Elizabeth Craft, but look at the shapes here. You probably have punches or other flower dies. They look a lot like the Tim Holtz flower dies that were really popular. Find what you have. You could even hand cut these really, or use your electronic die cutter if you don't have this set. You know, the big key here is that you're using either a ball and stylus or a marble or a bead or something to puff up your flowers, and then you're inking up those petals so they have a little dimension, but you don't have to have special tools for this. Use what you have, look around your stash. I know a lot of people have punches that are like this and they would be absolutely gorgeous. And the other thing I want to mention about flower dies is that usually they're sold to make a specific flower, but if you flip them over and you look at those dies and you look at the other dies to make other flowers, you can often see that they just keep repeating very similar shapes, and you can make tons of flowers from one die or one punch. So keep that in mind when you're adding to your stash. Make sure you know what you have so you don't duplicate what you've already got, because I mean, flowers are very similar. They change slightly in scale and in color, but you know, you can keep repeating different elements and make your own flowers. So all I'm doing here is just stacking up the petals. I use the like 2 full flowers and then a few single petals to make it full, and I don't advise gluing the leaves on yet. You just want to kind of get those petals in. Now to finish off the flower, I'm just using a flat backed pearl. You could also glue any bead in there, really. The flat back ones have adhesive on them, so they're really handy, but if you just have a bead, that will work really well too. And if you have any glue strings, just blast it with your heat tool for a minute, or actually a few seconds, and it will make them disappear. So here we've got our pristine white card base. I actually went upstairs, washed my hands before I touched this thing, because I knew I'd get fingerprints on it, and I just went over it with a bone folder to make sure the fold was good. Now I am just going to adhere this panel to the front of my card. I like to put my panel down first and then glue on any three-dimensional embellishments, and then on the inside of the card what I'm doing is gluing in the pop-up part. Now it's important when you glue this in that that point where it's all folded does not go beyond your crease on the center of the card, or it's not going to fold right. So you just want to make sure you know where that's going to land, and you want to use a good amount of adhesive so it's not going to pull up, because this thing is going to be, you know, moving and grooving all the time. You don't want it to come apart. And after I get one side glued down and situated, then I do the other side. So don't try to do it all in one fell swoop, because you might end up having something that's not lining up right or that's twisted. And if you do make a mistake, you can use your heat gun to heat up the paper and peel back the adhesive. So that's another good use for the heat gun. Now we're going to embellish the front of our card. Now I choose to go with odd numbers, either 1 big flower, 3 flowers about this size, or 5 smaller flowers would work. And I like to overlap them a little bit when I glue them down, so I get a nice full solid cluster in the center. I recommend waiting till after you've glued your flowers down to situate your leaves in. That way you can put leaves here and there where they complement your design, and you can avoid covering up anything in your background that you want to show. So just go ahead and nestle in as many leaves as you like. Now for the center pop-up part of our card, we can glue that in at this point. We already have it accordion folded, and we have it folded so we hide away our sentiment. We have to put adhesive, remember, below the score on the right side and above the score on the left side, because if we have adhesive on, like, below the score on both sides, it's not going to pop open. You've got to alternate that, okay? And then what I like to do is peel off the adhesive and close the card. That way I know it's not going to bunch up and it's going to open and close really easily. I want to thank you for watching today. Check out the list in the video description for links to all of the products I used. I want to thank our sponsor Rubber Stamp Tapestry for sponsoring this video today, and I thank you for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Until next time, happy crafting!